Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem video. This is a postmortem of my Blitz chess game number 43, where I was playing the Sicilian defense, and my opponent went into the Smith-Morra gambit. So let's check this out. So e4, c5, the Sicilian, and d4 right away, and I take, which is the normal move, and then c3. Looks like you can play knight f3 and transpose back into a typical Sicilian. And ordinary Sicilians, you play the knight there first, and then you push the pawn. But the idea when you play d4 first is usually to play c3 and make a gambit of it. And this is called the Smith-Morra gambit. And the way I usually play, let's go ahead and put it on the board, is I decline the gambit by playing knight to f6. And then he can push the pawn here, the knight goes to d5, and he can take or develop a knight first and then take. You develop your pawn to d6, and you get into a more typical Sicilian position. This is called the Alpine Sicilian we've transposed, or the c3 Sicilian, so we've transposed into that line of the Sicilian. But in this game, for the sake of the audience and the entertainment value, I decided to take the gambit. So I take the pawn, and he develops normally. We'll leave the opening book up here for a few moves. Knight c5, we're doing, looks like knight f3 is slightly more common than bishop c4. It's interesting, they only have a few moves in the Smith-Morra gambit, only a few games in this gambit. But these are the typical lines that you see. So e6 to blunt the bishop when the bishop comes out here. And knight f3. A6, it appears, is a little unusual. People play d6 here, which I'm going to get to in a move or two. And then he plays a3, and we're out of book. And what's interesting about this gambit is that even the computer agrees, even though black is up a whole pawn here, white has sacked a pawn, but it rates the evaluation as about even. So what that means is that white has compensation for the pawn. So this is actually quite a dangerous gambit, which is why I usually avoid it. But leads for some exciting chess. I thought for the video experience here, I'd play it and see how I fare, see if I've gotten any better at it over the years. But I've had some bad experiences in the Smith-Morra, playing black against the Smith-Morra. I've had some bad luck over the years. So let's turn off the opening book there and get back to the notation. So a6 maybe was not the most precise move. Yeah, the computer prefers... well, hang on just a second. What happened here? Oh, no, the computer likes a6. Okay, so I take it all back. So, it's a3, I guess, from white is maybe not the most precise move. I guess black is making these pawn moves. He's not doing this... in some Sicilians, black makes pawn moves as kind of waiting moves to see how white is going to develop. In this case, you have a pretty good idea that white is going to develop. The bishop will come out to here or here, and the queen comes up to here or here. He castles and brings his rook over. And so you know what's happening. You're just getting a full-bore attack. And the reason black is making all these pawn moves is to keep pieces out of these squares. It's difficult for white to land a piece in any of these squares now, so this knight is a little bit stifled. And you're going to play d6 to control these squares as well. And you're just trying to keep his pieces out of your position here, so you don't get destroyed. And that's the main idea in the early part of the defense here against the Smith-Morra gambit. And white doesn't really need to play these moves. He should really just be developing his pieces. So probably, what does the computer recommend instead of a3? It recommends castling. Probably a good idea, or developing the bishop. So a3 maybe a little slow, and d6, I get that in. Like I said, I'm controlling all the squares on the fourth rank here. There's as many as I can with my pawns. And although it's important not to get lulled into a sense of complacency, because there's still these sacrifice ideas where a knight can suddenly show up here at an inopportune time, and you'll see that later in the game. So far I've been playing okay and maintaining just some slight edge for black. But you notice this is way less than a whole pawn, so white still has compensation for his pawn sack. Maybe not full compensation at this point, but he's still doing pretty well. So the bishop went back to a2. I developed my knight, and queen c2. And I think here, castling is still okay. But I did overlook something. After I castle, he can get a pawn back. So this is kind of the first interesting attacking idea here. The reason he can get a pawn back is when I take back with a pawn, he can grab this knight. So he's won a pawn and traded knights effectively. But the thing is, after bishop d7, the queen just goes back. And even though I've given his pawn back, so the material's even, but my position has improved, and I can move my queen out of the way and bring a rook over to the c-file. And so the computer rates this still as slightly better for black. So I guess what that means is that castling was an okay move. Even though it gives the pawn back, it gives it back in a way that is still good for black. And that's often a theme in these gambits, that you take the pawn with the idea of giving it back at a point when you have some other advantage and you don't need to hold on to the pawn anymore. So that's material you've got in the bank, as it were, and you look for opportunities to spend it and buy yourself a good position. So he didn't play that. He played rook fd1, which the computer approves of, so I thought that was fine. And then I played queen c7, and now this was an actual mistake, and now there's a tactic, and you see the evaluation switch there all of a sudden to being favorable to white. And so this is a cool and also very typical kind of tactic. You see this in a lot of Sicilians, not just the Smith-Morra, but if you're playing the Moraxi bind against an accelerated dragon, this will crop up quite a bit. And that's the idea, knight d5. And if I take it, then he takes back with the pawn, and this knight is pinned. I can't move because my queen is undefended. And so if I just, what does it say? Bishop, computer recommends bishop d7 maybe. He can just grab this pawn. The computer says keep piling up. Anyway, I'm going to lose this knight, and white comes out with a good position. So he's gotten his pawn back, and has he gotten his pawn back? Yeah, if you look at the material, it's even. He's gotten his pawn back, and he's going to win this knight too. So that would be good for white, this knight d5 move. It says actually the best idea is, instead of taking the knight, to play queen b7. There's also an interesting variation, because the knight can come in here to f6, and if I take back with the bishop, I'm going to lose this pawn. So he gets the pawn this way. Took a while. I mean, there's other ways to play. I could also take with the pawn, trying to hold on to that pawn in the center, but then my king side is messed up and he gets attacking chances over here. So either way, black is back in the game after this move, knight d5, if he had played that in this position, knight d5. So that's a good trick to remember. It pops up in a lot of Sicilians, and the main theme is taking with a pawn leads to an attack by a pawn on a pinned knight here along the c-file. So it happens when you've got pressure on the c-file against a piece here. Okay, but my opponent played rook a c1, reasonable developing move, and I play bishop b7. Still knight d5 is still possible here. And then he brings in knight g5. And I didn't really see where that knight was going, so but I didn't want to leave it there, so I kicked it with h6. The computer thinks a knight e5 is also a good move here, but h6. And now he has the idea. It takes a while for the computer to catch on to this, but yeah, eventually you'll see it likes it. Knight takes f7, because if I take back with the rook, first of all, he's got bishop takes e6. That's the key idea here. Is this bishop is attacking this pawn. So taking back with the rook, bishop takes there, pinning the rook, so he can at least get a rook and two pawns for the bishop and knight. And he might leave the bishop there for a while and torture me. So good. Well, even position, the computer rates it. It's a way for white to get back in the game. And if I play king takes f7, what's the idea here? Just knight d5 again. Okay, so just piling up the pressure there. And once again, if I take, there's going to be problems here. And, yeah, bishop takes there with check. Okay, yeah, that would be pretty dangerous too. Anyway, that's an interesting idea. He, after h6, instead of going for that, he retreated knight to h3. So now I finally have sort of beat back the first wave of the attack, and I have basically the one pawn advantage, which was the gambit pawn that white sacrificed earlier. So tricky to play these openings. Got to watch out for these tactics all the time. So the game continues without too much drama until here. I guess the next kind of tactical opportunity comes with this move. Once again, I wasn't thinking about this, although the computer changed its mind there. First, e takes d5 looks pretty good. This is a really deep tactic. I looked at this earlier. So you can't be expected to see all the way through this. Although maybe if you were a master, or if this were a long game, maybe you'd notice all of this. But watch this. It's just interesting. E takes d5. Knight takes. Knight takes. Pawn takes. No, I'll keep taking. I'll take with the bishop. Rook takes. Pawn takes. Queen takes. So you might see that far and think, wow, this is not looking too bad. In fact, white has won 2 pieces, 3 pieces, and black has gotten a rook and a knight, I think it was. So a rook and a minor piece against 3 minor pieces. So that's usually good for white. 2 pieces are worth more than a rook, typically. But the sequence doesn't end there. That's why I said this was maybe a little bit tricky to see. Rook f8, chasing the queen back. So the queen runs over here to h4, and then grabbing on a3. Now, who would think of this one? So what's the point of grabbing on a3 here? It's you're unveiling an attack on this rook. And the king has got a weak back row. So say he takes, you take back with the queen, and if he grabs the knight, you're just threatening to come in here with check and then mate him. Oh, that's not it. There's a mate here. I misplayed that. So where's the mate? There's a check here. Now it's white's turn. Bishop e1 to stop it. Now, oh, rook takes e1. That's it. And queen takes his mate. So pretty, that was a pretty deep line. So if we back up a little bit, you shouldn't take the rook there. You should just move the rook away. Rook to d1 it recommends. And then the knight can grab that piece, say. And you can't take back. Is that true? What happens if you take there? Rook to c2 is dangerous. So the line just goes on and on. Anyway, and it turns out to be good for black. So I would think, if I had noticed this tactic at all and I had looked at it in the game, I would have thought it was good for white, to be honest. Takes, takes. I can see this far. Takes, takes. Takes, and then I can't take back because of the undefended bishop, and so you get 3 pieces. So by analysis, in a typical game, even probably a long game, would have stopped there, and I wouldn't have noticed this other stuff. But that's kind of what separates the really strong players from the average players like me. Pretty interesting sequence. Anyway, after due consideration, the computer thinks that e5 is the right way to play this, so it doesn't want to go in for that wild tactic because it favors black. So we're okay here. I'm maintaining my slight advantage. And bishop takes was a mistake. And there's some similar ideas here, but slightly different. So, and I actually found this tactic, so I'm not doing too bad in this game. I just didn't play it in the most precise order. So the best order to play this tactic in is to take the bishop first, and then play knight takes b2. I had noticed in this game that the queen was overloaded, and the queen is defending the pawn and the bishop. And I played the move knight takes b2. And it's just a little more complicated, and it's not quite as strong. So it turns out better for black to just take the bishop first and then grab the pawn. So the way I play it, knight takes, he can throw in this rook takes. I take back, and now I can exchange bishops. And if I just take the bishop back, he can grab the knight, and I'm down. How does that work out? After I take the bishop and he takes the knight, I've got a queen, a rook, and a bishop, and he's got a queen, a rook, and 2 pieces. Yeah, I'm down a piece. I have to keep taking. He keeps taking, and I keep taking. And now his best way out of this is to play bishop takes e6. And this is kind of a neat tactic, too, I guess. Wasn't at all obvious. I think he did the normal human kind of move, knight takes f2, and I take the bishop, and I'm in good shape after that, queen and bishop against queen and rook, and with an extra pawn. But there was one more trick that White had here, which is to take on e6, and I'm still a piece down, so I have to grab a piece. I can grab the bishop, but then he takes my knight, so I have to take his knight. And then he can take back with his bishop, getting his bishop out of take, and he's picked up a pawn. And now he's got a queen and bishop against queen and bishop, and the pawns are even. It says I have queen to b6 check, so it likes black slightly here. It thinks I have maybe a 1-pawn advantage here, but that's a pretty interesting tactic, I thought. Didn't notice that. It's because the bishop is on the same, just randomly, the bishop is on the same diagonal that allows it to defend this knight. So sometimes, analyzing these tactics can be really difficult, especially if you're looking ahead a few moves, because you had to decide, if we back up a little bit, I had to decide before taking on b2 if this sequence was going to work. So I thought about, okay, knight b2, bishop takes, knight takes rook, bishop takes, knight takes bishop, and I thought it was okay. And from this position, I did not realize that this bishop here had this move bishop e6, defending the knight. And so, again, it's that it's just randomly the bishop ends up on a good square that allows that defense. So chess is a very concrete game, is what they say. You have to really look at the very specifics of the position and the actual position of every piece before you can decide whether it's a good position or a bad position. Okay, so let's go forward again. We exchanged out, and so after taking, after I took his bishop, he took back my knight. Knight takes f2, and I take his bishop. And now this is a good ending for me. This pawn here is weak, and if he comes over to defend it, I can double up on it, and he just has a lot of trouble. The knight is too far away from this side to defend the pawn, and if the knight gets away from the king, there's some danger of an attack over here. So black in this position just has a really strong advantage. So I go in for the check and grab the pawn, and then we get into this race here where he's attacking me, and I'm figuring that I can get a queen and defend faster than he can complete his attack. So I defend with the bishop. He tries to bring the knight in, and I push this pawn forward. And this is what I was counting on, was I knew that before the knight would get there, my queen would have time to get in position to defend the bishop. So he tries going to this square with the knight to interrupt this defense. And I was a little bit worried for a while here, because he can now attack the pawn on f7, and I can't defend it. But so I'm forced to continue pushing my pawn, but it turns out to be good. So he goes to d7, attacking this pawn, and that unpins the knight. So that unpins my bishop, and allows me to take the knight. And so he resigned at that point. The other try here is he could have tried. Oh, hang on just a second. Let me do something. So back up this way. Don't want it overriding the game. If he had moved his queen to this square as a new variation, he's still attacking this pawn, and my bishop is pinned, so I can't take his knight. So I have to queen, and then he can get a check here, but my king can run over here, and there's just no mate here. So or even a perpetual check. It's this queen is guarding this diagonal, and I'm going to lose the bishop, but the queen and knight against 2 queens is just not good enough. After that, queen here is a really strong move. I'm supporting the other queen coming to here, and that will be checkmate, and I'm guarding the exit. So that would be game over that way. So So queen d7 was another try, but after bishop takes d6, you can see also the valuation is strongly in black's favor. There's just no good options here for white anymore. So anyway, I thought that was a really interesting game. Lots of cool tactics. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and leave any comments you have in the section below. And as I said in the previous video, this is going to be my last video for a while. I'm going to be away from my computer for about a week. So I put up couple games, 4 videos for you to look at today, and hope you guys enjoy them over the next week or so, and I will be posting again then. Okay, bye-bye.